and welcome to Art Alive. This week we're at the Open Eye Gallery for an exhibition called Open One that launched on the Light Night Festival and for the Liverpool International Photography Festival. So Thomas, you're exhibition coordinator here at the Open Eye Gallery. The exhibition Open One that just started, it's part of exhibition submission. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, sure thing. So Open One is the inaugural exhibition out of a series of 3 annual submissions, which will fall under the umbrella of Open, or the Open 2 and Open 3, to showcase work that's been submitted to us either online or in person. So we were fortunate enough to receive some money from the Brian Mercer Charitable Trust, which meant we could support artists that might not have received wide recognition in the UK or have recently graduated, and give them an opportunity to show their work, talk about their work, and bring that into a large-scale institution.
Okay. So is it open to everyone? I mean, can everyone participate to this?
Yeah, absolutely. So absolutely anyone at any stage of their career can put forward an exhibition submission, whether it's your own work or it's research on an archive or a curatorial proposal. It's all really interesting for us to see and look at what's taken the interest of people in the photographic community at present. Yeah.
Okay. So it's too late, obviously, for Open One, but however, you're going to have other exhibitions after that?
It's definitely too late for Open One, that's all I'll put on the walls and open. But yeah, Open 2 will be in 2016, probably around the same time, I'm imagining spring. It feels really nice to have an exhibition showing new work and to kind of feel quite fresh, and spring seems to fit that. Maybe we'll do autumn just as a twist. And then in 2017, Open 3, imaginatively titled as the 3rd opening.
So coming back on Open One, can you present it a little bit? Did you work on a theme in particular?
The work was selected as it shared a common thread, a theme that we identified as social portraiture. It's very well and interesting to showcase a submissions exhibition, but if all of the work is very disparate and doesn't hang together, you can't really feel that it's presented as part of a professional exhibition. In this instance, when we were considering all of the submissions work that came through the online or physical portals, there was a real sense of exploring wider societal issues, notions of globalization, of mass consumerism, of sort of distribution and centralized control. And it was that kind of reconnection with the personal versus the global issues that we wanted to present under the theme of social portraiture. So if we consider portraiture examining the essence of a person or understanding the character of an individual, in this instance, the sitter or the person becomes a lens for the wider issues of society.
Okay. So you have how many artists exhibited here?
There are 6 artists featuring Open One. There's 4 from the UK, 1 from California, and 1 from Australia as well, so very well represented globally. The work is really contrary to the notion of homogenization. So the more we become the same, the more we notice all of these individuals and we see people who are beyond the norm or beyond societal norms as well. And so it's really been fun to sort of celebrate this or explore this or interrogate what we do with people who maybe fall outside of those normal values that we hold dear to us. So whether it be a cultural reenactment or a play or the ways of behaving or things that we consider usual, the usual families or the usual behaviour, all of the photographers really interrogate that and explore alternate sides to that, which has been a pleasure to work with.
Okay. Shall we go have a look then?
I'd love to. In Gallery 1, our first gallery space, which has these wonderful high ceilings and long walls, we're exhibiting the work of Helen Marshall. She's a British artist who has a strong workflow in terms of design and collaboration. In this instance, Helen's been working with an Indonesian photographer, Raisang Yuwono, who she met while he was on residency at Gasworks in England. The two of them undertook a research trip in Indonesia, where they were working with the Tetra Pak musical drama form. So it's a wonderful, exuberant, theatrical set of works with these wonderful colours, this gold and sort of the jewellery, all inherent in the pieces. It's an art form of performance and drama, spoken word and song, which is there to convey something about Indonesian cultural heritage. It's to tell stories about myths and folklore. It was taken in late 2012 and very quickly was exhibited in Indonesia in early 2013. We're really happy to say this is its first exhibition in the UK, and it'll be moving down to London after here, around the end of the year in autumn. It's a body of work that celebrates a dying art. It's a cultural form of musical performance, soliloquy, speaking and drama, dress-up and cultural make-believe. It's the myths, the fables and the traditions of Indonesia, as performed by a wonderful, made-up, cross-dressing, brightly patterned troupe. The group is suffering in that people aren't quite so interested in going to see their performances. The tabong is a portable structure made of bamboo, the stage, the seating and everything, and it's increasingly empty as people eschew it for the cinema or TV or radio or mobile phones or any one of the number of mass communication devices which can distract their attention rather than going and seeing them. So the project really was a collaboration with the group. She worked with them, it was a research trip. She went out into the cities and asked them to perform and to find the props, to try and tell their story as a declining art form using their media. And so we have this very theatrical set, a very theatrical project where they're working together to tell their story. And I think it's marvellous. For our first gallery, the spring, for the submissions process, it's a really exuberant, light-hearted, bright, large set. In the series you can see a real conflict with the performers acting against symbols of modernism, whether it be a plane in the background, a cooler for soft drinks or an air conditioning unit. And they're just riffing and improvising and showing this kind of meeting of traditional and modern culture. In our second gallery we have 4 of the artists who've submitted and have work in the exhibition. On our back wall is this wonderful statement piece, The Miracles by Deborah Kelly. Deborah is an artist living and working in Sydney, Australia, and she's been very kind and very, very helpful in assisting us bringing this over to the UK and in its display. It's this marvellous, eye-catching collection of 37 separate works, all framed in these antique wooden tondos, an Italian word for a wooden frame. The reason being that they're reminiscent of these Renaissance paintings. After Madonna of the Pinks, for example, behind me, each of the Renaissance paintings itself is of disputed heritage origin. It is after the studio of or by a student of. This is analogous with the subjects. The subject is artificial reproductive technology. It's passionate, it's a tender work that shows the love of a family. But the families aren't what we consider normal families or traditional families or societally accepted families. They're a coming together of participants who love children. And thus the title, The Miracles, the play on the Renaissance, Virgin and Madonna and Immaculate Conception. And I think you can really see the tenderness, the love that goes into it, and it is that is the real subject here. It's not mawkish, it's not overindulgent, it's a wonderful piece. The works, the way they're presented, all of these tondos, these circular frames, could be conceived as cells dividing, enlarging this root of our biology, of birth and creation. And it's beautiful to see the whole piece framed, conceived, mapped, so whole as a project.
Join us after the break to find out more about Open One artists Billy McRae, Louise Quayle, Sonal Cantaria and Richard Ross. Welcome back on Arts Alive. This week we're at the Open Eye Gallery with Thomas Duke, exhibition coordinator, who presents us Open One, an exhibition about social portraiture through individual stories mixed with general public interest.
Louis Quayle's work presented in the gallery is the series Desk Job. In stark contrast to Soane Alcantaria's meandering, bright, unframed pieces, or Deborah Kelly's circular tondos in cells dividing, Louis's work is framed in precise box frames, spaced identically across the wall. And it's similar to the subject of the work, which is the cubicles, the office life. And it's really global, across Dubai, Berlin, US, London. All around the world, he's exploring the office life of people who have to go to work, sit behind their monitors, in front of their keyboards, and process whatever they're processing, from architects to town planners, marketers, or local paper writers. And there's something eerie about this repetition across the globe. You could pick someone up from London, put them down in Beijing, and they'd be in front of all the same tools in the same space, this little cubicle. But what's most striking is that despite this homogenized workstation, the colonization of the individual can't be stopped. You bring in a toy, or a photo, or a flag, or you inject something of yourself into the space. Maybe you bring your religion into the space, or you bring your music, or something like this, until the space that's set up for just a working person who's completely plug and play is individual. And it's quite glorious. It's wonderful to see how people won't be hemmed into these boxes and sort of start to spill over in these quirky little ways. Perhaps the reason each of the workspaces look exactly the same is that to maximise profit, an organisation can maximise efficiency. They can keep spaces identical, they can keep all of the tools and everything to as functional level as possible. But really corporations run like this and people don't. Individuals come and they kind of don't mesh with this. Efficiency isn't natural for humans. There's always a margin, there's always something else. There's always something going on that's beyond the corporation's control and maybe what they want. And this work really champions that. Soane Alcantaria is an artist living and working in London at the moment. The work behind me, her series Traces, was completed whilst on residency at Perth Institute of Contemporary Art, Australia, in 2013. And it really looks at issues of migration, identity, settlement, home and movement. It's somewhat more ephemeral work, really, in the wider umbrella of our exhibition. In terms of social portraiture, it's what we consider home or where we consider our land. It deals with migration of Indian individuals over to Australia, either first generation migrants or those who have grown up in Australia. Across both west and east of Australia, it really presents a holistic view of migration over there. It acts as something as a bridge in terms of where we consider home. In globalisation, in the borders that are becoming less and less useful for us really to see as people. Borders no longer apply to organisations or institutions and less so to individuals as well. Control of social movement might have repercussions in terms of how we're perceived or where we can fit in, but not in where we consider home. What is home? Where do we belong? The works are printed on a fine art paper as opposed to a glossy photo paper or being a C-print. And it gives the pieces a really luminous quality. They're not glazed, they're not presented in frame, which lets them feel freer, airier works. When you approach, you can see that the print has nearly a watercolour style texture. There's less detail, but the trade-off is that they feel warmer, they feel more textured. They have a certain quality. today is another of our UK artists and photographers. He's recently graduated with his MA in documentary photography from what was the University of Newport, now the University of South Wales. His series uses the medium of rephotography, or the technique of rephotography. And Billy's under no illusions that he's created this new genre of portraiture. This is a really common and contemporary used stylings, but perhaps what we're used to seeing this with is a more lyrical or poetic or harking back to the past in a romantic sense. That's really mixed up with Billy's series. Photographs from Billy taken in 2009 at the protests against the G20 summit meeting in London. The G20 being a group of economic rulemakers, people who can litigate banks and governments to set the economic tone for the forthcoming years. And naturally, there was a lot of protests against this. Anti-capitalists and liberals came and really filled the streets of London. And it's a very, emotional is one way of putting it, but active, violent confrontation really against a few controlling the lives of the many. Billy's images of the riot are fantastic press images. He's really managed to stay away from the sort of mob, the kettling, to get shots that show exactly what happened on that day. And he sat on this body of work and he had them and he realised that he could manipulate them, make them larger, make them tidier, and they were a superb set of images. He's still working in London at that time. 5 years on, he's walking down the streets and there's no sign of this emotion or these riots or this action. And he realises that he can make something of this. And so G20 double takes comes about. Where was all that passion? Where's all of that aggression now? It's completely nowhere to be seen. Has it seeped into our governments or economy? It's really up to the viewer to kind of think about and decide. The works are presented to you on this sort of shelf, sort of vitrine. They're not framed up on the wall. They're not treated like an art project or glorified in that way. They're printed on this beautiful thick German etching paper, which gives the hand that's present in each of the images almost a leathery texture and feel. You can see the presence of the photographer, Billy in this instance, in each one of the images, see him revisiting these sites, reconsidering the early works, and plumbing together those two times. As he walks the streets, as he did in 2009 and 2014, now you can revisit them and be there with him in 2050. Our third gallery space is a windowless, confined enclosure, and it's the perfect setting for our sixth artist and photographer, Richard Ross, and his series, Juvenile Injustice. We're showing a very small selection of the body of work, which comprises over 50 images. The subject of each is the incarceration and the holding of juveniles, or young people, in America. Across all of the states, there are these institutions which are there to arguably take care of and keep in check those who have been deemed beyond the social norm, against the law in some cases, for juveniles. The project is less an art piece and more a body of research. Ross has worked hard to gain access to each of these institutions and speak with these juveniles to get something about their conditions, to find out how they are, why they're there, and how they're being treated inside. I think that, and arguably, the work is not impartial. It presents a vision of this system which really says that the children in its care, the most vulnerable members of the American society, are not being treated well. There's violence or holding. One of the images shows those that have been through the juvenile system and have gone on to die in either gang-related activities or other violence. It's a very confrontational exhibition. The space is hung tightly. And for all the pathos in the work, it's very punchy. The pigments, the paper, everything is very confrontational when you step into the space. And You're lured in and then you're held, and it really kind of makes you feel something for the children, something for the institutions, and something for the system wider in America that thinks this is okay. Each of the works comes with a caption, which is very important to Richard Ross, and it is often a quote from the child there or something about the institution where they're being held. There's a couple of pieces that do have the faces intact, those that are being held for adult charges or have adult charges hanging. But otherwise, all of the faces are either blurred or obscured with blankets or hair because they're minors.
Just do the things I love, just do the things I love. They say that I'm a man, I hate it.
The exhibition runs until the 23rd of August, and in that time, each of the UK-based artists are able to come up, talk about their work, and broaden their understanding of the project, speak a bit more about it and open it up. We've got a workshop with Helen Marshall, so we'll be looking at performance and how to get the best out of that. So now we'll be talking about migration and movement. Billy will be looking at how to capture chaos without falling into it. And Louis is actually exploring globalisation with a member of the Liverpool Economic Governance Unit at the university.
Open One exhibition is displayed until the 23rd of August. That's all in Arts Alive. See you next time.